Hello, I'm Dave Norton. It's great to be visiting with you here today on the Palladium website. As you probably know, Bob Kaplan and I have recently published our fifth book. It's entitled The Execution Premium. And in the book, we talk about the importance of having a system to manage strategy. Turns out most organizations don't. The ones that do have a 70% chance of succeeding, which are pretty good odds for something like that. The book is based on makes the case for a system that has 6 components to it that you see on the screen here. Now, some people have observed in the recent months that as the world has gone into recession, they say, well, isn't it overkill to have a system, 6 boxes to manage a strategy? I mean, we all know what we have to do, right? We got to cut costs in order to survive. Well, I want to make the case here today that, in fact, you do need a system. You do need more than ever, a structure to help you to execute. A survey that was done recently of the CEOs done by the Conference Board asked them a simple question. This was in October of 2008. Asked a simple question, what are the issues, the barriers that affect you most in your job today? The number one issue, the ability to execute. The number 2 issue, the ability to execute my strategy consistently. The number 3 issue, the ability to react quickly and flexibly to changing circumstances. Now, what are those about? Those are all about executing, the things that you need to do to get results. They're not talking about the strategy. They're not talking about products. They're not talking about customers. They're talking about execution. So, yes, in a recession, you need to have the ability to execute. So I would say there are 2 simple questions, 2 simple answers to the question, what's different about managing in a recession? Number 1, you still need a strategy, and number 2, you still need to execute. So let's talk about the 6-box management framework that we propose in the Execution Premium. Let's begin with the, one of the things that we've learned from the past 15 years of working and building performance management systems in organizations is that you can't manage what you can't describe. And if you're trying to manage your strategy, you better have a way to describe it. So we introduced the idea of strategy maps. You see an example of a simplified example of a strategy map taken from a bank. Now, on there, you see the layout of how that bank intends over the long term to create shareholder value. But now, let's assume you're the CEO of that organization, and suddenly the world has changed. If you're in the banking industry, banks are going down all around you. They're being bailed out or they're being acquired. You have an emergency on your hands. So what are you going to do? Well, let's go to the system. Step number 1, you got to change the strategy. Now, changing the strategy means you have to move from your long-term development to maybe a short-term survival. You have to rebalance the strategy. Yeah. But now let's think about how you would do that. In a typical setting, you'd get the gang together, the executive team, and you'd come up with lists of things that you have to do. With a strategy map, all of that's different. The strategy map allows you to look at what's long-term, what's short-term, and rather than cutting 10% across the board, which guarantees you'll cut the things that are important, you end up rebalancing. And so how do you do that? Well, the strategy map is the critical idea to allow you to change the strategy. Imagine yourself as the general on a battlefield. All right, the conditions are changing, the reports are coming into you, you need to change the strategy. Well, where do you go? You go to the map, the topography. It shows where the resources are, where the enemy is, and shows you how you're going to go about changing. Well, the same was true in business. You go to the map. The strategy map tells you the directions that you were moving in and shows you the areas that you have to shift to. So if you look at the example on the slide in front of you, you can see how the bank that we talked about on the previous slide now is focusing on 3 short-term issues: costs, capital, and credit. Now, it doesn't mean they have thrown out the long-term strategy. It means they have probably slowed it down and deferred it. But I remember one of the people from the employees in this bank, talking about, when they saw the change in the strategy map, they said it was like our lifeboat. We knew this company wasn't going under. We knew this company wasn't giving up the long term. We knew that they had a way to deal with the short term. The strategy map was our lifeboat. So now You've changed the strategy. That's important. You can probably do that in 2 or 3 hours with an executive team, but that means 10 people know about it. So now we've got to start moving it out into the organization. Box 2 in our model talks about translating the strategy. A strategy to be executed has to be converted into budgets, into initiatives, into targets, into measures. And so all of these things now are going to change, or many of them are going to change. So think about the complexity. You just went through, you changed the strategy. Now, within a matter of hours, you go to your strategy map, you go to your scorecard, and you define the new measures, the new targets, and most importantly, the new initiatives. And the new budgets. The budgets may be smaller or they may be strung out over longer periods of time, but you're able to do all these things and you're able to do them fast. So now you've converted the strategy to a plan, but still only a small number of people know about it. So let's say you got 1,000 people in your organization. Now 50 people know about the new plan. How do we get the other 950 people into it? Well, we call that alignment, box 3 in our model. And it's a process for cascading the strategy from the higher levels of the organization to the lower levels. It can be vertical, where corporate converses to group, to section, to region, and it can be horizontal, where we try to ensure that IT and HR are integrated into the strategy, or that our supply chain partners are integrated. So this process of alignment, and that's an important word. It's a process. It isn't just a concept. You now have a structured way to take a strategy at the top and bring it down to all levels of the organization. So now 1,000 people in your organization, or everyone in your organization, knows that the strategy has changed. Now, box 4 in the planning model, link strategy to operations. Nothing is more important, as the world forces you to be short-term in your thinking, than to be able to get results at the operational level.